Is this what we have devolved into?
Dr. Fauci, I want to join my colleague from Florida in apologizing to you that some of our colleagues in the United States House of Representatives seem to want to drag your name through the mud. They're treating you, Dr. Fauci, like a convicted felon. Actually, you probably wish they were treating you like a convicted felon. They treat convicted felons with love and admiration. Some of them blindly worship convicted felons. Is there anything else you would like to say to the American people about your service to America during the course of the COVID-19 pandemic?
My main job during the COVID pandemic was to play a role with my team at the Vaccine Research Center to develop a safe and effective vaccine. And we did that in an unprecedented short period of time, never seen before in the annals of vaccinology. As we all know, that vaccine and those vaccines have resulted in saving of hundreds of thousands of lives in the United States and millions of lives throughout the world.
Another House oversight hearing means another opportunity for House Republicans, led by Marjorie Taylor Greene, the face of that party, to humiliate themselves in their interminable desperation to turn whatever they touch into a circus. Now, I don't want to bury the lead here, so I'll say this right at the top. The reason that the Republicans hate Dr. Fauci is because their leader, Donald Trump, utterly failed by responding to COVID. With 5% of the world's population, we had 20% of the world's cases and deaths, an unmitigated disaster of a response. However, lest you forget the cardinal rule of republicanism, it is never, under any circumstances, Donald Trump's fault. And so they needed a scapegoat, and they landed on Dr. Fauci. Why? Because they could launch nebulous attacks and conspiracy theories, and their base isn't discerning enough to know the difference, and it would accomplish their ultimate goal of deflecting the blame off of Trump. I mean, you've literally got members of Congress on the Republican side accusing Dr. Fauci of profiting off of the spread of a virus.
Dr. Fauci, how much have you earned from royalties from pharmaceutical companies since the pandemic began in 2021?
Zero.
It says NIH scientists made $710 million in royalties from drug makers. You're saying that you did not receive any of the $710 million?
On COVID, I received, I think, $122 for a monoclonal antibody that I made 27 years ago.
Okay, so just in general, though, how much have you received, not related to COVID, just in general, how much have you received in royalties between 2021 and 2023?
I think none.
Okay, so somebody received the $710 million.
Somebody did, but not me.
You didn't receive any royalties. Okay.
I see no royalties associated with COVID. I mentioned.
I said.
No, I want.
No, I just said.
I'm on the record, and I want to make sure that this is clear. That I've developed a monoclonal antibody about 25 years ago that's used as a diagnostic that has nothing to do with COVID, and I receive an average of about $120 a year from that patent.
Talk about deranged. This guy has dedicated his entire life to protecting people, and these Republicans are so high on their own supply of bullshit that they think one of the nation's premier immunologists, who served as an advisor to every U.S. president since Reagan, is somehow looking to get people sick and get rich off it himself. To say that these Republicans' brains are utterly broken would be generous. Also, not for nothing, but you gotta love how Nicole Malliotakis tried to land some gotcha and was just in way over her depth. A general rule for attorneys is that you don't ask questions you don't already know the answer to. Republicans would make pretty bad attorneys, which kind of explains why they lose so damn much in court. Jim Jordan also proved how in over his head he was by trying to outwit Dr. Fauci here.
Why was it so important the virus not have started in a lab?
Wasn't so important that the virus not. We don't know. We know
it was important to someone in the Biden administration, so much so that the top people at Meta, the top people at Facebook are asking, why are we getting all this pressure to downplay the lab leak theory? And we have an email from June of the same year, June 4th, 2021, saying the same thing. It was certainly important to somebody.
Well, what has that got to do with me?
I'm asking you because you're the expert on the coronavirus. I'm saying why was the administration so pushing not to have the lab leak theory as something that was viable?
I can answer that. I've kept an open mind throughout the entire process.
You kept an open mind. Dr. Fauci, open mind.
That is correct.
What happened in those 3 days? Why did Dr. Anderson and Mr. Anderson and Dr. Gary, why did they change their mind in 180 degrees? Because what Christian Anderson says 3 days later, after he said virus looks engineered, virus not consistent with evolutionary theory, 3 days later he says the main crackpot theories going around at the moment relate to this virus being somehow engineered, and that is demonstrably false. How did they figure all that out in 3 days, Dr. Fauci?
You can do that.
You still have an open mind.
Well, what they did is that they testified before this committee. What they did, they went back and looked at the sequences and realized that their initial concern was unfounded about that, and it did not look at all like it was manufactured. But as they said in their paper, even though they feel it was more likely...
3 days, they figured it out.
That's exactly. You could do that in 3 days. You can scan sequences in a day. You don't need 3 days.
Do you agree that there was a push to downplay the lab leak theory?
Not on my part.
Really?
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
I think most of the country would find that amazing. I still got 11 seconds.
But look at the facts. I've kept an open mind throughout the entire process.
All right, I yield back.
Yeah, you gotta love Jim Jordan trying to get Dr. Fauci to explain Facebook's actions, as if Dr. Fauci works at Meta. I mean, my God, these people are so all over the place, are so steeped in their deep webs of conspiracy theories that when they actually say this stuff out loud, they betray how insane they actually are. But if you're looking for the one instance of Republican cognitive dissonance on full display, that we're clear. We've sat by for the last week listening to every Republican under the sun decry the politicized prosecutions against dear leader Donald Trump. How dare you seek to hold a politician accountable? It's the weaponization of government. And then, 5 minutes later, you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene quite literally calling for the prosecution of someone she perceives as her political opponent. Which is just so weird because we were just told how inappropriate it was for political prosecutions to move forward. I guess the rules only apply to Republicans, huh? And just as a quick aside, it really is telling that Greene views her political opponent as a scientist and a doctor. It really does give the game away in terms of what Greene represents, doesn't it? And look, I'm not here to give advice to Marjorie Taylor Greene, but just as a general rule, when you're on the side opposing doctors and scientists, you're probably doing it wrong. So look, first of all, hearings like this are a joke in general, but they do provide one valuable service. They put on full display how absurd, how dangerous, how anti-science, how anti-common sense these Republicans actually are. Maybe, Republicans, it's not that the nation's premier immunologist was looking to spread a dangerous pathogen. Maybe it's quite simply that the idiot Republican president at the time pretended that the virus was a hoax and then that it could be cured by injecting disinfectant, and his followers believed him, and that is why the U.S. had such a failed response. That's not Dr. Fauci's fault. It's not Joe Biden's fault. It's not the Democrats' fault. That is Donald Trump's fault. And if these people weren't so hell-bent on protecting him at all costs, they might actually save themselves some embarrassment by admitting it.